what would you say to those who are still on the fence about coaching? And they know they need one, but they're not quite ready to do
Oh,
it
yeah.
yet, or they don't wanna spend the money, or they're hesitating. What would you suggest?
If you don't wanna spend the money on a coach and you have an iPhone that's newer than 2 years old, j or a car payment or anything else that a financial coach would look at you and say, "What are you doing?" It's likely not the money. And I ran a gym for 8 years. It's almost never the money with stuff that can be a perceived luxury, and I say perceived luxury intentionally. Health,
Mhm.
personal development, these are the things that create true, lasting, generational impact. And what I would say is our nervous system, our subconscious can have an almost autoimmune response to change. And it's programmed smartly because not too long ago in the history of humans, if we changed one little thing, we might get eaten. So I get it and I understand. And guess what? You're going to be fine. You'll be alive. And a 90% chance, that 99% chance that you'll be better for the journey. So if you want to go a little deeper before, but if that's not enough of an answer, ask yourself this question before you go on your walk. Why am I resistant to getting a coach? What is there in there that I don't want to look at? Because I promise you, my friend, whatever there is that you're trying not to look at is where you want to look to find the most freedom in your life.
Boom.
Boom.
Thank you for sharing that. And the funny thing is the reason I asked that is because I spent months being resistant to spending the money on a coach. And when I realized that the best way I could spend the money is investing in myself first because it will get me to where I need to go, then I released the hold that was on my money and allowed me to make that quote unquote purchase. And it was no chump change, but the difference between me spending that amount of money for a coach and say buying somebody else's program or doing something equal in cost is that I had no regret.
Yeah.
I had no regret. I did it. I spent the money. I have no regret. 9 weeks later, I he's worth twice as much what I paid for him. I mean,
A, a, a good coach will
personally.
get that. A good coach will get
Yeah.
that. I have episode 99 of my podcast. I had one of my recent clients on. He said after 2 sessions, he received double his investment. So
Wow.
um,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
good coach will get that. And I mean, it's a for to work with me for 3 months, it's a 4-figure investment. And like I said, I'm here to coach myself out of a job. So yeah, and as a coach, there is tremendous impact, and this work is regenerative. And being able to drop my own expectations of what a certain session will do for somebody or what something will do for somebody and let them walk their own path has been the most freeing thing I can do. I'm a bigger and bigger believer each day that enlightenment is just seeing reality as it truly is. And when you can see your thought patterns and your emotions for what they are, you can drop a lot of your personal biases, not all of them. They're ingrained in our head. And you can
Right,
you
and
can
new ones will pop up too.
new ones will pop up and you can get closer and closer to being able to truly see reality for what it actually is.
Do you have a story of somebody who you've worked with that had experienced a radical transformation like that?
Yeah, and I'll go back to the one that I just referenced who I had on my podcast this week because I know he's shared it and he's good with sharing it. My client Rob, he started drinking at a young age and he heard me give away that 4-step process on a podcast. And he had recently he had heard on another podcast the host say, "Ask yourself what's one thing that you can't stand that you do, and give it up." And his buddy and he posed this question to each other, and he had been drinking for about 9 hours at that point that day, and he looked at the whiskey in his hand and said, "This." And he heard me a couple days after that give that process away on a podcast, and he went and he wrote it down.
Mhm.
I've this work is so practical, and I've also went deep down some esoteric rabbit holes, and it's the biggest form of energy work I've ever seen. In our first session, he was working a relatively big story, and there was audible popping in his upper back and his shoulders. His posture when we started working together was forward shoulders, hunched over, protective in his chest, and he was sitting up bigger and releasing tension in his back. He had more mobility than ever in his thoracic spine. And now, if you saw a picture of Rob before we started working together compared to now, he looks like he's 2 inches taller. And it shows in his persona and the way he shows up and the father he is and the man he is.
Ah, amazing. Very inspirational. I'm sure that's one of many
Yeah,
stories that you have.
I've done over 500 sessions, so I've got a fair amount.